Story time about how I was accused of sexually harassing my coworker. This is my story time. I did post this yesterday, but it was like 5 minutes long, so here we are. Back in 2018, I had just gotten married and my best friend was working at a company called S3 in New York City. I was so excited to get this job, you guys. I was so broke at the time. Before that, I had worked as everything. I was an assistant, maid, served at like 20 different restaurants, worked at the strip club, and I did a whole slew of other things. This job paid me $8,000 a month. It was amazing. Like, I thought I was set for life. The job was pretty simple and it was really stress-free. I had to make phone calls and sell a financial app, and I was pretty good at it. Like I said, my best friend got me this job, and it was really nice because I got to hang out with her every single day at work. Now, my desk was next to somebody called Justin. Justin was one of the salespeople at the company. I heard from a few people that before I got there, Justin was not the friendliest. He wouldn't make jokes or laugh, but after I got there, his attitude completely changed. To be honest, I had fun with him. He was a great coworker, but of course, that was it. I didn't see him as anything else other than a coworker. He and I would make jokes all the time, talked about music and movies. He would talk to me about his dating life, and I would give him advice. This man either had really strong feelings for me, or he really hated me, because he ended up getting me fired. Part 2 is story time about how I was accused of sexual harassment and I got fired for it. This is my personal story time, by the way. The villain of the story, named Justin, he and I got along really well, and I sat next to him every single day at work. By the way, Justin was the youngest guy out of the entire company. Everyone else was middle-aged white men, while me and my best friend are beautiful and young and gorgeous. As you can imagine, we got stared at a lot. To be honest, this didn't really bother me because I've been stared at a lot in life. But when you find out what happened, it's infuriating. Walking down the street doing this voiceover. This is how badly I want to post this. The owner of the company is Bob. Bob and I got along really well. You see, I thought I was taken seriously in this workplace. I thought that I had value. But of course, apparently to these older white men, I did not. Today I get home from work and I get a message from Gabe, my manager. I don't like Gabe. Gabe told me not to come into work. And the following day, he tells me not to come into work again. Can you see how this would freak anyone out? I had a really bad feeling. Serena had no idea what was going on. If she did, she would tell me. This girl had my back always. Part 3 will be up soon. Story time about how I was accused of sexually harassing my coworker and got fired for it. This is my personal story time. Well, when I was told for the second time not to come into work, I was completely freaked out. Serena, who got me the job, asked me to meet her at Central Park. I had a bad feeling. Can you guys believe that S3 asked my best friend to fire me? They didn't have the balls to do it themselves because they knew that what they were firing me for was completely unfair. I get to Central Park and Serena tells me that they fire me. By the way, another coworker was there. His name was Jason. By the way, Jason had the same job as Serena and I and got paid a lot more. Inequality does exist. Went into a depression. I was anxious, was afraid, didn't know what had happened. Emailed the company asking what happened and they didn't want to tell me. Anyway, a couple of months later, I find out that Justin had gotten me fired. He told the boss that I was offering him blowjobs. By the way, when I got fired, Justin offered me financial help, pretended to be my friend. What an asshole.
Story time about my toxic ex-best friend. So a little background information. I had a very close guy friend who we're gonna call Max. Now, Max was 2 years older than me, but due to our families being super close, him and I became best friends. Growing up, I saw him as kind of an older brother, and then eventually as we grew up, I saw him as my best friend, until I realized that he was actually a terrible person, and I missed all of the signs that he was not a real friend. Like one, our first fight, I told him something that I didn't want anybody else knowing, and what do you know, right after I tell him, my family knows, his family knows, my crush knows, all of our friends know. After this, I probably should have distanced myself, but he apologized and we became friends again. That was sign number 1. Sign number 2, his huge change in attitude. 1 second, he would be extremely rude to me, and then he would be this really sweet and caring guy, and his apologies were the best. So it was really hard not to forgive him. He was like a master manipulator. Number 3, we only talked whenever it was convenient for him. Like seriously, we would never talk, unless he needed something, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic ex-best friend. I think we left off on sign number 3, which was the only time that we would talk was when it was convenient for him. He would never reach out, which left me being the one who was constantly trying to preserve our friendship or whatever was left of it. Like, all of our messages were literally me, and it made me seem really needy, and like I was putting in way too much effort because he would literally answer with the most simple messages. Like, yeah, okay. Sure. And he would only talk to me whenever he wasn't with his friends. Sign number 4. It felt like he was embarrassed of me. Now, I know that I was 2 years younger than him, but we were still friends, and I really don't think that's that much of a difference. Like, he would never want to be seen with me. The last sign, he would literally always talk about me behind my back. And I thought this was just rumors at first, until finally several people told me that it was not a rumor. He would say things like, oh, she's ugly, she's so immature, she's annoying and childish, she's so annoying. And then I finally decided to cut him off. Because if the bad outweighed the good, was it really worth keeping that person in my life? Story time about how my sister went missing on our family vacation. So little background information, my sister, my family, and I decided to stay at a beautiful luxury resort in the Caribbean. Now my sister was quite a few years older than I was, but I was super excited because my sister and I were finally going to be able to spend time together after her being away at college for what felt like so long. Which her and I did spend a lot of time together, but my sister was living her best life. She was young, smart, outgoing, beautiful, and everything else under the sun. Allison, aka my sister, was the girl who, in a room full of 100 other people, she was the one who caught your eye. And of course, all of the guys were drooling over her. There were the boys that were her age, and then there were the older men, and then there were even some of the married men. Gross, I know. And even some of the women. But she had 2 little vacation situationships going on. And like I said, she was living her best life until she wasn't. The one night my sister Allison ended up not coming back to the room. And that was the plot of Saint X, a new show on Hulu with new episodes every Wednesday, streaming now.
Storytime about how I've been in love with my best friend for 6 years. This is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. Let's call my best friend Rick. Rick and I have known each other since we were 3 years old. We're actually neighbors and we went to the same school, grew up at the same time, and we did everything together as kids. Most people thought we were siblings. His mom became my mom's best friend, and our parents would go to dinner almost every single week. Growing up, we treated each other like siblings. He always watched out for me and had my back when we were in school. But things started to change when we got into high school. Rick started dating a lot of the girls in school. Suddenly, I started to get really jealous. Instead of spending time with me, he would start spending time with his new girlfriends, duh. But we would always go to school together, and instead, he started dropping off and picking up his own girlfriend. So I didn't have a ride to school anymore. Instead, my dad would take me to school. We would always hang out after class and on the weekends. So you can understand this was a huge change for me. At first, I thought I was just jealous because I was losing my best friend. But when I told my mom, she asked me if I was in love with him. At first, I was like, no freaking way. But then I became even more jealous. I was always angry with him for hanging out with his girlfriends. I started missing him so much, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. I was constantly checking if he was home or not. I would simply look out the window and see that his car wasn't there. I played it off as much as I could when I would see him. We all happened to go to a party and his girlfriend was there with him. Out of nowhere, she taps me on the shoulder and asks me if I'm in love with Rick. I didn't know what to say. Part two of how I've been in love with my best friend for 6 years. This is not my story time, is sending me on Instagram. At the party, his girlfriend asked me if I'm in love with him. I actually froze and didn't say anything. Then she got right up in my face and asked me again. I answered no and basically ran away from the party. When I got home, I got a text from Rick asking me if I was okay. I told him I was just tired and I wasn't having fun at the party. Then he sends me a screenshot of messages his girlfriend sent him. In the messages, she told him that she thought I was in love with him and that she could tell just by the way that I looked at him. He told her there was no way and that I was just a sister to him. He actually thought it was hilarious that she would think that. God, if only he knew that it was true. He then told me that he needed to stay away from me just to not make her jealous. This hurt me so much. He was choosing her over me. She actually ended up cheating on him and they broke up. A few years passed by and during that time I dated other people, but I couldn't stop thinking about Rick. Guess what I did? I moved 2 cities away just to avoid him. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I've been in love with my best friend for 6 years. After I moved away just to try to forget him, it did not work. I just couldn't stop thinking about him. After a year, I moved back to my hometown. I decided I would be honest with Rick and tell him how I really feel about him. Well, it's been a year since I moved home and I still haven't told him anything. Girls fall over themselves just to try to date him. And everyone he's ever dated literally looks like a model. And I know that I can't compete with that. Now, I know I'm not ugly or anything, but I'm definitely not the model type. I decided to open up to Rick's mom and I told her how I felt. She's actually really happy that I told her the truth. And she told me that she always suspected it. She also told me she would love Rick and I to date. I told her that I just didn't have the courage to tell him how I really felt. I mean, imagine you going up to your crush and telling them that you like them. It's so hard. She also told me Rick wants to get married soon and finally settle down. Apparently, he's sick of dating around. So basically, he's looking for a wife. I don't want to sit on the sidelines and watch him with somebody else the rest of my life. I just can't muster up the courage to tell him. Rick and I had dinner a few nights ago, and he told me that he actually likes someone from his job. I almost started crying right then and there in front of him. I'm hoping he doesn't ask her out. I want to find a way to tell him without me dying of embarrassment. If you have any ideas, please let me know. Or maybe I just shouldn't tell him at all. Maybe I can find someone else. What do you think?
Storytime about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So a little background information, I was 18 and a senior in high school. And in the middle of the school year, I had a new student in my 4th period class who we're going to call Jose, and he was 17 years old and in 11th grade. Now, he wasn't technically new because I'd seen him around school and everything like that. But up until this point, neither of us knew that each other existed. So he gets introduced to the class, blah, blah, blah. He sits in the very back of the room, and I knew that this man was going to be my boyfriend. So when I got home that day, I was texting my friend about him. Thankfully, she gave me his Snapchat. Fast forward, we're talking, and elevators get brought up. Now, in my school, you are not allowed to use the elevators unless you're injured or for some other reason. Well, he was talking about how he always used the elevators and nobody really cared. So I meet him at the elevator the next day and blah, blah, blah. We start flirting. And this led to him and I being super close. Like, we would FaceTime every day. We would always sit together at lunch, in class. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So like I said, every day after that, him and I were pretty much inseparable. We would FaceTime literally 24/7. We would always sit together during lunch, during class. Well, the one day I'm sitting in my homeroom and he comes in and he asked me to be his girlfriend. Of course, I said yes. So fast forward to Halloween, my family was handing out candy and he was going trick-or-treating with his family because he had younger siblings. And this is where our families were supposed to meet, but he didn't end up coming to my neighborhood, which I was super happy about. Well, then fast forward to my birthday. Our families were supposed to meet again, but it didn't end up happening again. And I wasn't really sure if this was the reason why things got weird between him and I. The one night I was over at my friend's house and Jose's on FaceTime with me. And I was talking about how I could pick him up and him and I could hang out. And he literally just didn't even say anything. So I was like, okay, is that a no? So then he was like, I don't know. I might be busy, blah, 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 blah. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So like I said, him and I are on FaceTime. I'm asking him if he wants to hang out and he's being super weird about it, being super standoffish. Well, fast forward a little bit, he seemed like he wasn't interested in me anymore and it really hurt my feelings, obviously. So he didn't talk to me the rest of the day and then he texted me the next day. And he was telling me how different we are and how we barely have anything in common and how we rushed into things. Pretty much a bunch of shitty excuses as to why he thinks that we should break up. Well, after that, him and I don't speak for a few days, and then I had a fake account on Instagram. And after our breakup, I viewed his story the one day. So then I look at his Instagram story, he posted a picture of another girl with a heart. And then I found her account and she had pictures of them dating back from like 2 years ago. Now, still to this day, I don't know if he was cheating on her or if they were on a break or whatever, but I also thought that it was weird that they were dating because she was 19 and he was 17.
Storytime about how my crush sent my nudes to my family and my friends. Disclaimers are not my storytime, is not on Instagram. I'm 17 going on 18. I've had the same high school crush since I started high school. He's the most popular boy in school. He's definitely a player. He gets all the girls, but then he pretends to be all innocent and pure. My problem was that I never realized how evil he was. Evil incarnate, like the devil. A little backstory. When I finally grew out of my awkward stage, boys started noticing me more, including the devil. He started trying to sit next to me every single day. At first, I loved this. I mean, hello, he was my crush for 4 years. Slowly but surely, he started talking to me and finally asked me for nudes. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my crush sent my nudes to my family and my friends. Disclaimers, not my storytime, is on me on Instagram. After giving me the tiniest bit of attention, he asked me for nudes. And what did I do? You better believe I sent them to him like the dumbass I am. I literally got up to go to the bathroom in school and took some nudes. And I sent them to him. Then he led me on for about 2 weeks. He made me believe that he liked me and we started texting every day. He even snuck into my room one night and made out with me for like 2 hours. I thought he was like in love with me or something. Then one day I woke up to a horrible message. My friend telling me that my nudes had been leaked. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my crush sent my nudes to my family and my friends. Disclaimers that on my storytime was that me on Instagram. I woke up to a message from my bestie telling me that someone had sent her my nudes. My stomach instantly dropped and I ran to the bathroom. 2 minutes later, my mom comes running in yelling at me. And my dad right behind her. They start banging on the door while I have diarrhea. They had also received the nudes. Can you imagine being in my place? I was grounded until graduation. My parents even took my phone and computer away from me. I finally got them back 2 days ago. But luckily, my crush was expelled and all his friends left him. I mean, what he did was pretty messed up. My parents are trying to sue his parents because I'm underage. But I still have a crush on him, you guys. I want to text him so bad. What do I do?
Storytime about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime. And I was super excited because I had just got my license. But my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok. And she didn't have the right seasonings for it, so who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she did that for like 10 minutes, but whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone, and this woman came up to me. She was like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is." So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, "Yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her?" And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter. And I was like, "I'm going to go tell a Target employee." And she was like, "No, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place." And she was like, "Will you help me check the parking lot? Because I don't know if she left." She was like, "I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, "Okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car?" And she was like, "No, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around?" And I said, "Yeah," because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, "I think someone's under my car." And she was like, "What? No. It's probably just the shadow." And I'm like, "No, there's someone under my car." So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me.
Here's a story time about when I broke off my 1.5-year engagement with my ex-fiance. We met on a movie set. He was playing my boyfriend, and within a week, we were already calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. 2 months into the relationship, he convinced me to move to LA with him because we both wanted to pursue acting seriously, and he was an established model already. He had worked in Tokyo and Paris as a model. Of course, I was so in love. I said yes, and I left my family, which was really heartbreaking for them. I will totally always regret that decision because I left way too soon. I was so young. We struggled for money in LA, but I decided to get a serving job, so I was making more money than he was because he was working at a movie theater making $8 an hour. Because of this, I had to pay for a lot of the bills, and I even started helping him pay off his school loans. We also shared a banking account, which was terrible because I was putting in way more money than he was. I hated the apartment we lived in because I would wake up with roaches in my hair, so I decided to get a second serving job. When I asked him to get a second job as well, he said no because he was very happy at his job. Part 2 is up. Part 2. So I asked my fiance if he could get a second job to help me out with the bills, and he said no. I would tell my mom and sisters about the situation, and they would tell me that he should definitely be helping me out more, and I just would make up excuses for him, and I just thought it's okay, he can work at the movie theater, and I will work my 2 jobs. At this point, I was paying for most of the rent, most of the bills, and his student school loans. I owed $20,000, you guys, and I was paying for all of that. I even got a 3rd job because I wanted to save up to move out of that crappy apartment. Finally, I got hired at the strip club as a cocktail waitress, and I was able to quit all of my other jobs. My ex-fiance was definitely happy with the amount of money I was making at the strip club. Of course, he felt absolutely no pressure to get a new job and help me out. I finally put my foot down and told him we were moving to a better apartment because I was not happy in the apartment we were in. I told him he had no right to say no because I was the one paying for everything. We found the perfect apartment and I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful and I felt so at home there. Then one night I was sexually assaulted at the strip club. Of course, I was really affected by it. At first he was supportive, but after a few days he basically told me to get over it. 3. When he told me to just get over the sexual assault that I experienced at the strip club, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the man I was about to marry would be so insensitive. And then I just started realizing, wait, I am paying for everything. I pay for your bills, I pay for your rent, I pay for your student loans, and you're here telling me to just get over this sexual assault. It was like someone had put a mirror to my face and was showing me the truth. The final straw was when I told him I wanted to quit the strip club because I didn't want to be in that environment and I didn't want to see the man that had sexually assaulted me again. He said, absolutely not, you can't quit, the money is too good. And that's when I broke up with him. I told him that I couldn't be with someone who didn't care enough about me and only really cared about the money and to be kept. He was so comfortable with me paying for everything and him just chilling at a job where he got paid $8 an hour while I was busting my butt every single night. He told me I would never find anyone better than him. The breakup was amicable, thank God. He didn't stress me out or anything. He kind of said, you know, you'll be back. Of course, I never went back. Know your worth and be with someone who actually cares about you.
Storytime about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So a little background information. I was 14 years old and had just started my freshman year of high school. And my brother and his girlfriend were both seniors. And we're going to call his girlfriend Riley. Now, Riley and my brother started dating in the middle of the summer. And you would think since they just started dating and basically just met each other that I wouldn't know her that well. But literally 2 days after they started dating, she started spending every single day at my house. I'm being serious, like she had a whole duffel bag that had basically her closet in it. But that wasn't the problem. So in the summertime, my parents would plan a lot of family activities. And since they were called family activities, his girlfriend wasn't allowed to go. I mean, I think she would have been allowed to go, but she was also really disrespectful to my mom. So after one of our family days, my parents asked my brother if Riley would be joining us for dinner. And he just ignored them and went up to his room. And my room's right next to his, so I could hear everything. And Riley called him like for part 2. Part 2 about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, my room was right next to my brother, so I could literally hear everything. And I guess Riley called him and she was complaining about me. She was like, she's the reason why your mom doesn't like me. I feel like she's jealous of me. She doesn't want us to be together, which was really weird because I didn't give a fuck about what my brother did. So fast forward, school finally starts, and Riley lived about 20 minutes away from us. So my brother told her that he couldn't go and pick her up for school every day. But obviously I would ride to school with him because we lived together. Anyways, eventually she had a problem with that too. So my brother and I had to start leaving 30 minutes early to get to school so we could pick her up. So the first time that we pick her up, we pull up to her house. And obviously I'm in the front seat and she's just standing there. So my brother rolls down the window and he's like, get in the fucking car, we're gonna be late. And then she literally has the audacity to start arguing with my brother in front of me about why she should get the front seat instead of me. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I hated my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, once she got in, she started screaming about how she should get the front seat instead of me. So I turn around and I'm like, last time I checked, you've only been here for 2 months. Stay in your fucking lane. And then she starts crying because she's like, oh my god, your sister's so mean to me. Like, I just feel like I should have more respect as his girlfriend. So fast forward to the weekend, my mom said that she needs to have a talk with me. And she's like, honey, I know you may not like your brother's girlfriend, but you have to stop being mean to her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've only had one conversation with her in the last week, and that was to tell her to stay in her fucking lane. And then I told her about everything going on. So she calls my brother down to ask him if it's true. And my brother was pretty pissed off at me, but he wouldn't lie. So my mom said that she was not allowed over the house anymore, and that he wasn't allowed to go pick her up from school until I got my license. So that just caused more problems between her and my brother, so he broke up with her. And then she started spreading rumors that she broke up with him because there was something weird going on between him and I.
Storytime about how my husband makes me pay for everything and still controls all of my money while he's totally unemployed and broke. Disclaimers is not my story time, send me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 6 years. 2 of those years we were separated and we recently got back together last year. He lost his job during COVID, so when we got back together, he didn't have a lot of money. Obviously, I didn't really mind. I was just happy we were getting back together. And if you're wondering why we separated, it's because he got really jealous and controlling of everything I ever did. When we got back together, I told him that he needed to change that. And I really could see a change in him this time around. The only problem was that he refused to get a job. I have a really good salary. I make about $80,000 a month. Theoretically, I could totally support him. When I asked him why he didn't want to get a job, he told me that it just wasn't for him. And he also told me that he wanted some time off and he just wanted to travel. Well, this is when things start to get complicated. When we got back together, he was living with his parents, so he ended up moving into my very nice apartment. I live in a really beautiful high-rise. I have a doorman, a gym, indoor pool, and then he moved in with all of his junk. I had to start paying for everything. Anytime he wanted to go to dinner or order food or buy groceries, I was the one footing the bill. He even uses my Amazon account to order whatever he wants. While he was at home playing video games, I was in my office working my ass off. But things get worse. Part 2 is story time about how my husband controlled all my money while he's unemployed and totally broke. Disclaimers is not my story time, send me on Instagram. After 3 months of me paying for everything and him using my Amazon account to buy whatever he wanted, including gaming consoles, this man had the audacity to tell me that I was spending too much money on my designer bags. Yeah, you heard that right. Until I decided to treat myself for my birthday by getting myself a Chanel bag. As soon as he saw the new purchase, he started acting like I was addicted to shopping. And then he starts bringing up all these other things. How I like going to Starbucks, how I like going to the nail salon, and that's when I realized it. He had access to my bank account. He could see all of the transactions that I was making. And of course he could. I was in my office all day while he had access to my laptop at home. And of course it didn't occur to me to change my passwords. I was actually really shocked when he started bringing all of this up. Then he suggested that I should let him manage my money. And at first I just went with it. Said okay, and that's when he literally took my credit card from me. Then he started moving money around my accounts and started buying crypto. After 2 months of that, I was done. I asked him to give me my credit card back, which he did. He started guilting me into feeling like I shouldn't go to the nail salon and do these little small things that make me feel good about myself. He was brainwashing me. A few weeks later, it was time for me to upgrade my car. So I decided to get a Tesla. And when I told him, he got so angry. I could see in his face that he was so envious. He spent 2 hours trying to talk me out of getting the stupid Tesla. But the very next day, I went straight to the Tesla store and bought my car. When I finally got the car, he started driving it all over town before I drove it. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my husband controls all my money while he's totally broke and unemployed. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After he started driving my brand new Tesla before I did, I started getting really snippy with him. I was always angry and in a bad mood. That's when he started getting even more controlling and this time jealous again. He started to suspect that I was cheating on him. He started showing up to my office to just check on me. By the way, I'm totally aware that if I leave him, he has no money. So of course he's gonna be totally controlling of me. Unfortunately, this is when we started getting into really big fights. I reproached him for everything. Him controlling all of my money and literally telling me what I could or could not buy. And I finally mustered up the courage to ask him to get a job again. And I told him that if he didn't get a job to start paying for half of the bills and everything else, that I would simply file for divorce. He started to cry and he threw a tantrum, but eventually he said yes. Do you think that he moved a muscle to go get a job? No, he didn't. So I took it upon myself to see if my company was hiring. And they did. So now he's got a really good job because of me. I revoked all his access to my accounts and I have full control of all the crypto. Now I give him a weekly allowance. Cannot wait until he starts getting paid. My parents think I should get a divorce, but I'm not sure. What should I do?
Storytime. Karma didn't do its job fast enough, so I had to take matters into my own hands. So a little background information. My best friend Ellie had just passed away in a car crash. And for some reason, these two girls, Jackie and Jayla, decided that they were going to talk shit on her all the time for no reason. Like, they had some weird, unhealthy obsession with her for no reason. Like, the one time they literally put me in a group chat just so that way I could see them talking shit about her. So I told my best friends Christy and Megan about it, and we decided to come up with a plan to jump them. So in the morning and after school, Jayla and Jackie would walk by my house to get to theirs. So obviously we weren't going to do it in the morning because nobody had the energy for that. But we got baseball bats and everything else. And we did end up using them. Like, we ran up on them after school and we started to beat the shit out of them. I don't want this video to get taken down, so use your imagination because it was pretty bad. And both of them ended up in the ER. One girl was in a coma for the week and the other one had a broken collarbone. They ended up pressing charges, but my thing is, this is a girl who can't defend herself, so I would have done it anyway. Storytime about why you should stay away from guys who just got out of a long-term relationship. So a little background information. I was 14 and I was in high school. And I had just moved from a normal high school to a special education unit where there was only about 60 to 90 kids. And I met this guy named Robert, and he was supposedly the most popular guy in school. He was a grade above me, and he was super hot. He definitely had a reputation with the girls, and his body count was higher than his age. Well, I have a single stay-at-home mom, and her and I haven't had the best relationship, and she's kind of strict, but also kind of not. Like, for example, sis will let me get my belly button and my tongue pierced, but will not let me hang out with boys. Does that make sense? Absolutely not, but here we are. Well, somehow Robert and I started talking, and then we started dating, and everything was going super good. I was seeing him every day, spending every single hour that I possibly could with him, until I came home one day with a hickey on my neck, like for part 2. Part 2 about why you should stay away from a guy who has just gotten out of a long-term relationship. So like I said, him and I started dating, and the one day I came home with a hickey on my neck. I didn't sleep with him, but him and I were fooling around. But my mom went psychotic. She grounded me. I wasn't allowed to see or speak to Robert ever again. Which was stupid because I'm a 14-year-old girl who's in love with a boy. I'm definitely going to find a way to talk to him. So now this led to me thinking that he was going to get bored and not want to be with me anymore. So finally, 2 months later, my mom was letting up and she let me go out with my friend Lauren. But we ended up just going to Lauren's house so that way Robert could come and see me. And I think I forgot to mention a few red flags. All of my friends told me that Robert had an ex-girlfriend of 4 years that he was absolutely in love with. But that wasn't the worst one. He told me that he was never going to get over his ex and that he was always going to want to be with her. And then he asked me to be his girlfriend 2 days later. And we're going to call her Lucy. Well, I posted a few TikToks and Lucy's best friend Ellie commented on my TikToks, like for part 3.
My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, and how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend, and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. When her and I went to lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me, and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad, and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing, but at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid, and that she was not gonna walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her, and that's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him, and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch, that I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend, and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time, and my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do?